My name is Tabby, and you're listening to the Modern Life Podcast. For this special episode, we figured we got the beautiful Pacific Ocean right here. Why not do this podcast underwater? Yeah, we had some audio issues we didn't notice until editing. We did everything we could to make our voices more clear and intelligible, but just be aware that this one does not have our usual sound quality. Now on with the show.
We're getting a little boy from an orphanage in Nova Scotia, and he's coming in on the afternoon train.
Oh, how do, Matthew?
Is the afternoon train due soon?
She's waiting for you on the platform.
She?
My name is Anne Shirley. Anne spelled with me.
It's a girl.
I can see that. Where's the boy?
There weren't any. Just her.
We have absolutely no use for a girl.
You don't want me because I'm not a boy?
She's no good for us.
We might be of some good to her.
Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to the Modern Life Podcast. My name is Tabby, and I'm here with Stacy.
Hi.
And Stacy, we're going to start with you. What is your modern thought today?
My modern thought is I was going to talk about my vaccination process. I got my second shot last week. I just want to talk about California's had issues with it being very easy to get vaccinations if you are in certain areas and if you have access to driving. I ended up making my appointment in Ventura County, which is an hour away. So I was lucky in the fact that it was a super simple process. I had to drive for it, but it was I had no problem making the appointment. I had no problem getting there. The whole process was seamless. I went in, took the shot. It was beautiful. It was so well done. And then I hear on the news how many other people are having issues, and I'm realizing that has a lot to do with people that don't have access to a car, or don't have access to it, and then certain populated areas are so populated that no one can get their vaccination shot appointments because, and they're not lucky. They don't have a car. They can't drive an hour away to get to get that. So I mean, I guess my modern thought is I do think that there are areas that they should be getting some kind of drive assistance to those people so that they can get out of the areas that they are overpopulated.
Well, and if you look at a country like the U.S. that already has so many infrastructure issues, they only are more noticeable now in these times of crisis.
Yeah.
It reminds me again of the voting, too.
Yeah.
What we went through last year. It's all these same issues again and again.
Yeah, it's definitely a broken system, and it's just interesting to see how some people's different processes, you know what I mean? How some people's stories are so different with everything. Because I listened to a couple of, several different podcasts, and some people are still struggling with how to make an appointment. And even your experience with the appointment system was different than mine. Because I think that, the wording and some of the, sending us an email telling us to make an appointment and then the link doesn't work. Those things are blockers for a lot of people, especially people that aren't tech savvy or any, you know what I mean? And it's fascinating to me just to watch how different people have experiences. So that's just highlighting it.
It's a good one. It's definitely true. Yeah. So mine is related to Anne of Green Gables, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And it is about the book and how popular it is in Japan. You and I, we kind of looked at the anime for a little bit, which was popular, and they have a bunch of different animes based on classics, children's classics. But this is related to a woman named Hanako Muraoka. She was the one who translated Anne of Green Gables into Japanese. And in 1932, for example, she had a radio show which reads news to children. It was called Auntie Radio, and I thought that was such a fun concept of engaging with kids with, kids don't really listen to the news that much, but her radio show was really popular, and she stopped doing it kind of as World War II started breaking out because she didn't want to say anything negative about Canada, which then was considered the enemy to Japan. And during World War II, during all these air raids, she would take Anne of Green Gables with her and start to translate it. And it came out after the war in 1952 in Japan, and it became an instant hit. And that's kind of the reason why it became so popular. And I thought it was just really cool that she managed to bring something kind of so foreign to Japan And also, she was never able to visit Canada. She had a trip planned, but then she died of a stroke in 1968. Her granddaughter wrote a biography of her, and it's finally coming out in English this year. It should be coming out in the summer. It's called Anne's Cradle, The Life and Works of Hanako Muraoka. So yeah, I might just check that out and learn more about her. And
That's fascinating.
yeah.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, let's dive into the main topic, Anne of Green Gables. I'm just going to read off of Wikipedia here just to give a quick summary. It came out in 1908. It was written by Lucy Maud Montgomery. It's set in the late 19th century, and the novel recounts the adventures of Anne Shirley, an 11-year-old orphan girl who is mistakenly sent to two middle-aged siblings, Matthew and Marilla. They intentionally had intended to adopt a boy to help them on their farm in the fictional town of Avonlea in Prince Edward Island, Canada. The novel recounts how Anne makes her way through life with the Cuthberts in school and within the town. I would add to that some notable characters include Mrs. Lynde, who is the nosy neighbor, Diana Barry, who is Anne's best friend, and then also Gilbert Blythe, who's a schoolfellow and has a crush on Anne. And Stacy, I know you really loved this growing up, and I came to this really late.
Which is actually surprising because they actually, when they filmed this documentary, they filmed a complete separate version for Germany, where they
really?
where they filmed where they filmed like extra scenes and everything.
The 85 version?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and they actually two of the actors in it, the Reverend's wife was German, and the guy that played John Sadler. And they actually had like 9 extra minutes of scenes that they filmed with just those two for the German version, which I thought was super interesting because I had no idea.
Is that the farmer?
Yeah, that's the dad. John Sadler. Yes, that's the farmer. Yeah, that scene isn't in the book. There's a bunch of scenes that weren't in the book that when I went back to read the book, because the first thing I did was read the whole novel series before I even watched the show. And then the show, I used to watch like a ton of like old movies. It's not even an old movie, but I used to watch like a ton of like, I don't know how to explain it, but I used to watch like a ton of like AMC, and that's actually where it came out. And I was like obsessed with it, and actually gave a copy to my daughter, and she actually has read the book and like loves the series as well. And she watched it with me the other day. I don't know why I grew up loving it because of the imagination aspect and the difference between like most people who live in their head versus those who live like in reality. Mm-hmm. And I definitely kind of swung more toward living in my head, in my own reality, especially when I was younger. So,
and the book really celebrates that too.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
The character of Anne.
Yeah,
but that scene with the farmer who's like catching the kids climbing over the gate.
Yeah.
And then he like goes to the
school and like rats them out.
And I'm like, wow, this is quintessential German content right here. Like Germans always want to speak to the manager. Like,
well, now you know why.
Well, Karen's at heart. It just made me laugh. I thought it was great. So in the beginning of the show, Anne is living with another couple that has a bunch of kids. Mm-hmm. She grows up raising children when she's only a child herself. Mr. Hammond, he gets a heart attack, and that scene this time around was really funny to me watching it because they're at this wood mill processing plant. Mm-hmm. There's like a big machine going, like chopping up the wood. This guy has like a heart attack and like falls to the floor, and one of the employees like puts his ear on his chest and is like, he's a goner. And I'm like, how would you know that? Like, it's so loud.
You can't hear the heartbeat.
Yeah, but the wood mill is going. Like, this guy just has supersonic hearing.
That scene's not even in the book.
I like it.
I love it. I think it works so. I think it works so well. I think they do a better job of like. Because when you go back to read the book, I have that in the back of my head. So I have like all those pictures and images, which kind of like brought Anne's character kind of to life a little bit. I don't know.
I think modern audiences also don't really understand the concept of children as laborers. Like Matthew and Marilla, they only get this orphan, so they get help on the farm.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of how orphan was seen. You see that time and time again in the books from that period. They were there to perform
jobs.
Yeah.
Basically to help you raise the kids, or
Yeah.
they were second-class citizens. I think they did such a great job in the show of like highlighting aspects of that, like by how she gets treated and how she gets blamed for things versus like how the other kids, you know, like she gets caught climbing over the fence and it's her that gets told on, you know
With
what I mean?
the
It's
teacher
like,
too,
just every aspect of it, like from there's so many different scenes where she talks about like, oh, the life of an orphan, you know what I mean? And she's like I get so like criminalized or like looked down upon. It's immediately her fault that Diana Barry drinks and gets, you know what I mean, like because she's an orphan and she's a bad seed.
That scene where Diana gets drunk, classic scene.
Yes.
Do you remember the first time you had alcohol? Because I remember it. I had it on accident, and it was so gross. It tasted so bad.
I have 2 teenage children, and I've had them taste, just because I tasted it when I was younger, and I didn't like. And they can't stand it. They have no interest in drinking it.
Right. I think that's a universal experience. Yeah, Diana Barry is down to party.
Have you had? I know she was down in
just drinking.
I don't know though, because I don't know what the difference is between because that raspberry cordial I would think would be very similar to drinking Chambord.
Yeah,
so I don't know what I drank when I first drank, because I'm pretty sure that what I drank was tequila, and yeah, that's gross. It doesn't have a good flavor. Red wine doesn't have a good flavor. All of the things that I would have been introduced to first, it's not the same as drinking a liqueur. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe it was just so sweet, the currant wine.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's such a different. Now the fact that it hits her almost instantly, that's the part that I'm laughing at, because she legitly after one, she's I know, but it takes time for your body to process it.
She had 3 cups of that stuff. She's I think she's a party girl at heart.
She is definitely a party girl at heart. That was quite impressive. I for anyone to drink anything 3 cups so fast, to me, even if it was that sugary, I'm yeah.
Yeah, when I first read the book, honestly, I thought Anne was kind of annoying. I had a rough start with the book because It starts out with Matthew driving her home, and she just won't shut up.
Yeah.
The whole way over, and I was like, oh no, is this what the whole book is going to be like? But then it gets real fun, and they really show that nicely in the movie too, because you get all the imagery. I think that's something the movie really gets right, is the environments and the, when Anne says something like, oh wow, look at all these blossoms in the lake, you feel it.
You know that half of those snes were actually filmed before they even cast half the
They just got the nature shots.
Yeah, they did all the long shots and stuff like that, way ahead of the time, and then cast, because they struggled to cast people in this. Not that people didn't want to, but because it was a Canadian documentary originally, they wanted Canadian actress to play Megan Follows.
There was a documentary?
I mean, it not a documentary. I mean, I'm sorry. The miniseries was a Canadian miniseries, they were very specific in the fact that they wanted a Canadian actress to play Megan Follows, because it was it was such an important book in Canada that they wanted it to be a Canadian thing, so Canadian actors and things like that.
Yeah, they said they interviewed thousands of actresses.
It took them over a year, and they originally wanted Diana Barry, the one that played Diana Barry, is actually Katharine Hepburn. It's her niece.
Oh, so she's Katharine Hepburn's niece.
Yes, and so originally they had wanted to cast her in the role because Katharine Hepburn told her to go try it, and Megan Follows, the one that actually ended up playing her, actually the first time that she played in the role, she was horrible. She didn't get the character. So they then went on to interview a bunch of other people and then brought her back. And the second interview, something happened with the tape, and she still didn't nail the role because they thought she was too old. And then funny story behind the third interview is that her toilet broke right before she was supposed to go to the interview. She got so upset and spastic about having to leave while her toilet was overflowing and whatever, that she showed up to the interview and it was Anne, because she was so like,
That is such a weird story.
it's the truth.
After 3 tries, you finally get the role when there are so many other girls.
Yeah.
That is just a weird story.
It's a weird story, but it ended up working. I can't picture anyone else playing Anne. I think she does a great job. I've seen other people, like I've watched other versions and like no one nails it for me.
Well, she also talks about the immense pressure after them auditioning so many people.
Oh, I'm sure.
And this character, people have ownership over this character.
Yeah, no.
People are going to watch it and they're not going to like it. And she was like, well, I'm going to do my best, but like I can't, it's not possible to please everyone.
Yeah. Which
is kind of like a pretty mature thing to say.
Yeah.
Like, even as a kid.
Well, I don't think she was like I don't know how old she was when she got the role, but I don't think she was like
I thought she was, when they filmed it, she was the age she is at the end of the show.
Yes.
I think when she first arrived, she's like 11, and by the end, she's going off to school. She's supposed to be like 16, 17.
Yeah.
And I think that was how old she was in the beginning. Well, they kind of did it with the, she has the...
Yeah, they did a great job
hair
of like the hair.
The short dresses.
Yeah, she definitely had a unique sense of style, like once they allow her style to show. And it was always slightly different than everybody else's.
I think there's honestly quite a few costumes that don't work in this series.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because Marilla, I don't know what's going on. Her dress is always like 5 sizes too big, and her chest looks really strange. And it's something I'm always like staring at her chest because it's almost like she's not wearing the right underwear for the silhouette of the time. She looks like she's wearing like modern clothes underneath, and then they just gave her this, this is the dress we had, and it doesn't fit the actress. And that, to me, that contributes so much to how an actress like feels. And it's too bad because she's such a great Marilla, and then I get distracted by some of these little details. Yeah, but it's strange because like Rachel Lynn's costumes, for example, they fit her. Like Perfect. They fit her perfectly, and for some reason with Marilla, I don't know if...
Do you think that maybe that was a decision based on the fact that Marilla doesn't really care about that stuff, and it's just to her just something to put on?
I don't know if I would agree with that, because she doesn't care about the latest fashions, but she still cares about looking presentable at all times. And Matthew doesn't have that issue at all. They gave him like a great costume and great clothes, and he always really looks like he's fitting into them. But
yeah, I wonder if it just has something to do with like how they want Marilla portrayed.
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying? Like just kind of like she's supposed to look kind of like homely, not homely, but like doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like about like she wants to look put together, but never. It's more about clean. You know what I mean? I don't know.
The only thing that has me thinking it's maybe a budget issue is when Anne finally gets her dress with the big sleeves. It doesn't fit her. It's like a completely different size, and you can see her shoulders like drooping, and it looks really odd. And when she's like, wow, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever worn, I'm like, you're lying. It's not believable.
That dress.
It's so ugly.
It's the ugliest dress I've ever seen, and it looks horrible on her. And it's one of it is the one costume thing that like throughout the movie I'm like, I hate it.
I have to look away.
It's so hideous.
But Diana doesn't wear anything better either, because she wears a strange,
like
purple dress with like a weird neckline, and I'm like, these look like adult clothes that you picked out of the storage, and you're like, oh, we don't have the budget.
Yeah, I don't know if they had a huge budget for this, so it's highly possible.
Yeah, just to come back to really quick, just the setting and all the nature shots. This show nails that, where other versions of Anne of Green Gables really don't. Like the new Netflix one, I don't ever remember there being oh wow, this is a beautiful meadow, or this is it always looked really dark. And
I feel like they that's one thing that they don't get sometimes, like in newer films, is that some of the books are so focused on how beautiful, because that's part of the world that they're creating, and I think that some movies these days like don't take enough attention to detail in the filming of like those scenes, because they're so wrapped around like the people and like showing the drama. I watched like one episode of like Anne with an E, and like or one season with Anne with an E, and I was like, by the end of it, I was like, okay, like it was good and I liked it. And then the second season started and I was like, this is just like completely, I can't.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because the first season gets so many things right in terms of character, and then in the second season, it's very obvious that they're like, oh, okay, we got the rights, like we have the cat in the bag, like but now we're doing our own thing, we're not following the books. And like, how do you feel about somebody taking this material and then?
See, that doesn't bother me if you nail the motive, like behind the person's character. If you can tell, if I can see the characters from the original actually doing those things, then to me, then I bought it. It's okay that you've changed the story. It's okay that you've changed the, location, everything. But when you change the person, then I'm like, okay, now this isn't Anne. Don't call it that. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not the same thing. For me, character development is like huge with something, because if I can't buy in to them, then I can't buy it.
I think it just went too far off the rails.
Just what they did with the whole scene of Gilbert and like him go, I'm like, this is just.
Oh, he goes off
on a ship or something like that, and it's just so stupid. And then their relationship is weird, and it's not like I watched like 2 episodes in, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. This is just not for me.
Yeah. That's kind of why we're focusing more on this one, because there's also another one that's free on Amazon.
It's a new one. They just filmed it like I think 2016 or 2015, and I haven't seen it yet.
I saw it and I was like, I don't remember anything about it, and then I tried to rewatch it for this one, and I was like, there's a reason why I couldn't remember. It's not memorable. Like nothing in it happens. That the guy who plays Gilbert is this very strange, like younger child who's not. It's just everything's forgettable about it, which sounds really mean, but
no, I think that there was a magic to the 1985 version that I don't think anybody else has been able to capture. Gilbert, he's one of my favorite characters in the first one. I mean, in that version, just because he never seems like he's acting.
Oh yeah, and it's all in his eyes.
And it's like he's just like, even with the stupid like head thing that he does, where he's like, I know you guys, we should see what I'm doing right now.
He's doing it perfectly. She's nodding.
And he's clapping, and he's doing this little nod thing that he does. And it's just so brilliant. And the whole time you want to like, because Anne hates him for the first movie so much, and the whole time you understand. You want to smack her and be like, stop. He's a typical boy. You're being ridiculous. But then at the same time, it's like part of the charm between the two of them and the build. And also just Anne's not wanting to grow up in that sense. And like, she doesn't like change because her life is perfect for the first time. You know what I mean? And she's perfectly content in that life.
I don't even know if Gilbert's a typical boy. He's
he's special.
He's special, yeah.
Like the actor, he actually was in high school plays. And he got cast in this as his first on-screen film. But he was literally, they saw him in a play, a high school play, and then they cast him, which was the perfect role.
There's one of my favorite scenes, and it is when they're doing the spelling competition.
Oh, yeah.
And Gilbert gets it wrong, and he has to sit down, and then Anne gets it right, and she shoots him this look of like, I got you. I got you so hard. And it's all in the eyes, and he just looks at her like, all this is doing is making me fall more in love with you. Like your brain is amazing to me. Yet in her mind, she's like, oh my God, like I showed him so good. And I'm like, no, Anne, that's not what's happening.
That's not what's going on right now. I can't even explain like how much like you can see the pain when like she like throws something at him or like, but then he controls it enough to like still play on that a little bit, like taunt her at the end. You know what I mean? Like when he goes and gets her, rescues her from the bridge and saves her, and he knows like just enough to like taunt her into like playing along with him, or like the scene where he like decides he like could tell that they're like joking at the dance thing where she's wearing the horrible dress. They're like talking about him and like, oh, I'm going to get him to dance with me. He's head over heels for me. I can get him to do whatever I want. And then he totally ignores her. It's this little tiny like
He's so mischievous.
but he still has to go back and grab the little dance book, I
The
love
dance
that.
card. Let's talk about that scene because it's not in the book. And I think it's a great addition.
Oh, it's such a great addition.
And it gives Gilbert some nuance too.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh no, I'm going to ask, he asked Diana instead, right? Instead of asking Anne. And I like it.
It shows his character development a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you can see like him knowing how he feels, but then still knowing that if he plays too hard into it, that Anne's just going to like run over him. And I think that's important because Anne is such a strong character. You have to see Gilbert as that to really believe that they eventually could end up together. Like there has to be...
The power dynamics have to be balanced.
You know what I mean? And I think sometimes in the book you didn't get that power dynamics. You just see him as the guy that's in love with Anne.
That's such a good point, yeah. Especially in the second book, he's kind of just mooning over her the whole time, and you kind of think, oh, poor Gilbert.
Yeah. Even in the second movie for this one, they still have that. They still show like a little bit of a power dynamic, which I think the movie actually does better than the book in that sense. So
there's also another scene they added, and I'm wondering if it's a mistake they put in, because it's a scene between Diana and Anne at the very end, and Diana asks her, like, oh, is Gilbert, like, fair game? Can I go for him? And then nothing happens with that scene. Like, there's no follow-up on that, and I feel like...
that because you see that through the entire movie, like, Diana's face, and this is something she does brilliant as well. She constantly, like, whenever Gilbert does anything, there's, like, this look of, like, jealousy, but never, she doesn't let it take over her, but there's always like that ping in her eye where she's like shocked, or like surprised. Like, did you notice that? Like whenever anything happened between Anne, like when he apologized, she's like, how are you upset? He apologized. He's never apologized to me for anything. Like you can see that she kind of longs for him throughout it. So when you get that scene, it's like, finally, like Anne can see it because Anne's never seen it. Anne never notices from day one that like her best friend's in love with Gilbert.
Was that in the book though? I don't think so, because I reread it a little bit, and it always felt to me like Diana was just looking out for Anne. She was like the wing woman trying to get Gilbert and Anne together, and this angle of making Diana kind of in love with Gilbert, and it doesn't go anywhere. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely something that's... I can see what you're saying. It's not like a surprise. To me, it wasn't. Like, I knew that Diana
in the show. They set it up. Yeah, that's
they
true.
set it up like very... I mean, there's like little pings here and there and like a look of jealousy. And so I don't know if they needed that for... I don't know what they needed that for. Or maybe it was... I mean, I guess I could see that was a push for Anne, that there is something there that maybe like... to see him like as something outside of just being the annoyance.
It's just not my favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely...
There's other strokes of brilliance that they put in there that I think are much better. One of them is actually the teacher, Mrs. Stacy, when she's a brilliant character. When she comes to, have dinner with them, and at first Marilla's like, what do you want? And then she's like, oh, Anne's like my best pupil. And then Marilla's like, come have dinner with us. And I think they kind of combined that with the scene of the religious couple, the minister coming over, and then Anne almost accidentally feeds them. Like, they kind of cut that out and instead combine that with...
They played Miss Stacy up a little bit more.
Which I think that's a brilliant choice.
Like, I do. I think it worked really well. And I actually, like, the Reverend plays a much stronger role, I feel like, in the book than he does in the movie. And I wonder if that has something to do with the fact that he's like more German. Like, you don't really hear him talk in the movie. So that might be because he's part of the like more of the German scenes. I haven't like seen that. This is something that like I didn't even know there was a German version. But yeah, I mean, because I know that there's like 9 additional minutes of just like him and the other guy. Yeah, that's a lot for filming. Yeah. Maybe they play more on the book side in the German version than they do in the Canadian version. But I wouldn't know. But that would make sense to me that maybe the scenes are different.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
That there's like a special German cut for this.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the other teacher too. Because he's horrible.
Horrible.
And every version depicts him as this pedophile who's like coming after the kids.
Yeah, but that didn't work for me because at the time she's 16, the girl that he's
and
training.
I think he's 16 too in the book. Like,
yeah, like I don't remember if he's 16 in the book or like whatever, but he wouldn't be that.
They're almost the same age.
They're almost the same age, but they one cast him as this much older character, which I thought was weird, and two, like it's not actually that abnormal for the two of them to be like interested in each other when you have like this 16-year-old girl like with this teacher. I mean, it didn't make sense to me how they portrayed him, and they don't really portray him as weird like that in the book, if I recall correctly.
That's what always confused me, because I didn't realize until my book club told me the thing that you just said about their ages being very near, because especially in Anne with an E, it's very scary.
Yeah.
Like the relationship between this older man and the student. And I think in the book, all they say is it's more about his teaching and how unprofessional he is and how
that is where
he's just flirting.
That's where they play. Well, because that made sense to the time too. Like it's not inappropriate for them based on the age that they would have been for their two roles. Like it's I don't know if they were doing that just to highlight something that was going on at the time when
the movie came out.
When the movie came out, if there was like something that they were trying to highlight so that they show that was inappropriate. But the fact that they made that decision and then everyone else took that same decision and like made it even more drastic, like Anne with an E.
It's weird.
It's weird to me because it's not in the book, you know, and that was a personal choice that the director made to like even he didn't make it super creepy in the book versus in the movie. I mean, in that movie, it wasn't like super creepy. It was just like a little awkward.
Yeah, I still hated it in this one. I think it's more about Anne and Gilbert and all the other kids kind of have to teach themselves because this guy is just dedicating time to one student, and that's why in the book, he gets fired or, he transfers, and then Miss Stacy comes in, and which I love. You see the difference between a teacher who actually cares about teaching, and those are some of my favorite scenes, the Miss Stacy scenes in the movie.
Oh yeah, they're phenomenal. I had this one teacher in my third grade year, Miss Honeywell.
What? Is that a real name?
It's a real name. And it was like right when everything in my life, like just everything was bad. And I think that was like right around the same time that I read the book. I like correlate the two of them as the same person. So I think for me, because Miss Honeywell was so like such a light, that like Miss Stacy has the same appearance to me. And I think it's why I like was so drawn to her.
That's a cute little story.
Yeah. So yeah, there was definitely, I mean, how many teachers can you remember their name?
Honeywell, that's a good name.
She was, and she had like she started in the PE teacher, who I can't remember his name, but they ended up falling in love and like getting married.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it was really, and he was my other favorite teacher.
Oh.
And it was just like, it was so cute. But she definitely was a huge light at that time that I didn't have anywhere else. So to me, Miss Stacy was always like represented that. So yeah, always warm feelings for her.
I love that.
Yeah.
There was another thing I want to ask you about, and that is the hair issue in the movie. I have accidentally dyed my hair green with this like henna dye. Have you had any hair mishaps like Anne has? Any bad stories?
Well, I think my biggest story in terms of my dad was a fanatic about my long hair. I have naturally long, curly, spirally hair. Wouldn't let me cut my hair.
Really?
Couldn't dye it, couldn't color it. I was not allowed to do anything to it. I was a tomboy.
Yeah.
I had no interest in my hair. I wanted it. I thought I was a boy until I was like 10 years old. In my third grade year, one of my best friends who I had known since kindergarten used to get mad at me because I wouldn't brush my hair. I went to school with it in just complete
horrible. Oh
my God, it was like ratted. She would get mad at me because she was very girly and she was constantly trying, like, Stacy, just put a headband in, like do something girly. And I was like, I don't care about my hair. Well, at one point, my mom behind my dad's back took me and got my hair cut, and she gave me a bowl cut. It was the
Oh.
ugliest haircut.
Oh no.
But I was so happy I didn't have to brush my hair. I didn't have to do anything to it. But I look back at pictures and I'm like, that was not a nice thing to do to me. She gave me bangs. I had the Dumb and Dumber haircut. It was the ugliest thing on the face of the earth. But I was so happy. But my dad flipped the shit. And he did not let me cut my hair again until I moved out of the house. And now I have short hair.
Well, speaking of parents, Matthew and Marilla are often listed as like some of the best literary parents out there.
Yeah.
And what I love about this is, again, plays into the dynamics of the relationships, which Montgomery just got so right. It's just how extra Anne is all the time.
Yeah.
And then that look of exasperation Marilla has that you can so relate to. And then Matthew kind of just like giggling to himself.
Oh, it's so brilliant.
It's so fun.
Obviously, I love every character in the book because everyone's like my favorite. But Matthew was always such a gem to me because he was always like, he only put his foot in once in a while. But when he did, man, he it was, this is what's happening and this is what's going to, and Marilla never once he did that, she was like, okay, hands off. Like, I'm going to listen, his like little smiles in the background and and he's so quiet and how they just portray him in the book as being such like an outcast. I think that they did such a nice job of still capturing that, but not highlighting it in the movie as much. Cause in the book, he's like supposed to be this little awkward thing. And they do the scene that they really show that is the first scene he goes to buy the dress. And first, you know what scene I'm talking about? Because he's like, oh, the sugar. He's like, yeah, I need sugar. And she's like, brown or white? And then the rake. And oh my God, it was just such a fantastic scene. And then she like gets all excited when he finally tells her like she needs a dress and goes over and it's like in the window. And he's like, I'm not going over there. I don't know. It was just so brilliantly done. And then Marilla's reaction when he gets home and she finally sees the dress and she's like, just her facial expression when she like perks up her lips and she's like, oh, this all makes sense now.
What I think is probably the best line in the show and in the book is when Matthew said, Marilla's like, well, we have to send her back. She's not going to be any use to us on the farm. And Matthew says, but maybe we can be some use to her.
Yeah, that was...
It's the most powerful line. It's the best line.
It's the best line. And he does it like so...
matter of fact.
Yeah, and like matter of fact and like heartfelt at the same time. Yeah. Like, I don't know. It was just...
I can really see an actor going super cheesy and being like, well, maybe we can be some good,
Yeah,
like,
but he didn't. It was just like, it was done perfect to the character. Like it built him. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah. I do think it was interesting that in the book, when they decide to keep her, they decide to keep her. It's not like a question.
Yes.
And then in the movie, they decided, I thought that I did not remember that when I started rereading the book. Like, do you think it worked better that they did the trial period, or you think that they should have done more toward the book? Because they add in extra scenes that way too. Like the whole scene with the first outing where she tries ice cream. Mm-hmm. Like in the book, they do it where she goes by herself. She puts like she decorates the hat. Do you remember this? And she goes with the neighbor.
Yeah, I thought she was going to church. I'm misremembering though. She went to the ice cream.
No, that's the ice cream outing. And
the ice cream social.
And Marilla's not in it at all. That scene in the book. Yeah. She that also was one of those scenes where it's like, I don't remember it from the book. I remember it from the movie.
The film, yeah.
And I always find that interesting when I go back to play on things, like which way I remember it. Because there are some scenes where I remember it like the book, and there are some scenes that I remember like the movie. And I'm always wondering, like, does my mind do that because I like how it is in the movie better than how it was portrayed in the book? Or is it just visually that was more of a memory to me? I think I like how they did it in the movie better.
I think it works because it's always fun to bring all your actors in and have more of a interplay between them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I found that interesting. Yeah. I do think that how they portray that in the book of her like decorating her ridiculous hat to try and make up for her outfit was an important character build that I don't know. I think they kind of missed that a little bit in the movie because I think that she comes off, everybody says she's kind of odd, but like in the book, they do a better job of like showing that oddness sometimes. And in the movie, they play over it a little bit. Does that make sense?
I think they show it a lot when they're inside the home with Matthew and Marilla.
Yeah,
maybe
but I'm
not
saying,
so
like,
much outside.
I think it was important to show that character development outside as well. Does that make sense?
Yes. Like that she's starting to fit in more with the community.
And then they like took the whole, I thought it was such a brilliant play in the movie, in the book, that they made it that she could stay home from school.
Yes, I like that a lot.
I loved that in the book. And I thought that it was brilliant to let her come to her own decision.
Yes. So in the book, the teacher, right? Yeah. The teacher does something she really doesn't agree with.
The teacher makes her sit with Gilbert.
Yeah, I feel like maybe they were setting that up in the film and then they dropped it.
Yeah, that's possible.
I do like that she's kind of like, no, I'm going to study at home. And I mean, from what we've seen, like it's the same since the teacher is not doing a great job anyway.
But she is deciding to go back to school. But I thought that was I liked that character build and the fact that Marilla would have done that. Because that fit in with her so well. And then they took that out of the movie. And
you expect Marilla to not agree with it.
Yeah.
But she does. She does end up letting her stay at home.
Well, I think that has a lot to do with her character build in the book, which is slightly better than her character build in the movie. Just from the perspective of understanding her backstory a little bit, they have that scene with like Diana and her talking about her old love.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you find out later that like in the book that was really Gilbert's dad. And you didn't really understand why she reacted the way she does to Gilbert in the movie sometimes until you unless you've read the book and you understand that like the reason she got so upset and she didn't get upset with Anne was because she did the same thing. Like she had this little thing with him and then like
they fell out.
Yeah. And like, and that's it, which is why she lets Anne do the things she does and still like appreciates it. That is one critique of the movie that I think they did a better job of developing in the book.
In the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's only so much you could film, and that book has so much going on.
Yeah.
I mean, really the movie is Anne of Green Gables and Anne of Avonlea combined into one movie.
Little bit.
Yeah. There's like a lot of...
And some of Avonlea is also in the next movie, and some things you just need to cut out.
Yeah.
And I think they did the best they could with it.
I think they did brilliant. That was one scene where I'm like, when I was reading back, I was like, oh, it would have been nice to have seen that.
Yeah. And the thing with Matthew and Marilla too, the balance of her kind of no nonsense and she's kind of more harsh, and Matthew being, the quiet presence in the background. Sometimes you need to break that up. And again, just coming back to the scene where Miss Stacy comes over for dinner and they all break out laughing at the end. That felt like I was watching a family in their home. It didn't feel like I was watching a film.
Yeah.
And you don't always get that in a movie where it feels so natural and everybody just seems to click in these family scenes.
There's like that one scene like right after Matthew passes away. And you have this awkward moment not awkward, but a beautiful moment.
Yes.
But it's done so beautifully because you can see Marilla's like insecurities because she's never been the warmth for him. You know what I mean? And like, I think for her, it was like, that was Matthew's job. So she had to play more of the disciplinary. And if you've ever been a parent, you understand that like, there's like this balance that you want to have. And it's so hard if you don't have the balance from a partner. And I think that I so sympathize with Marilla's character rewatching it later, because now that I've been a parent.
If one person leaves, the dynamic we have here, what does that mean for the ones who are left over? How do they have to act? How does that change our relationship? Because it's like, you're not just mourning Matthew as a person, you're mourning a certain like relationship that you had. Yeah, I thought they did a really great job with that scene as well.
I just thought it was so brilliant, like just like being able to show Marilla's like insecurities because they don't ever really show it. And in that scene, you
that's
see it.
true.
And it's so beautifully done. Ugh.
But let's go to Matthew's death. I feel very conflicted about it because
A lot of people do.
the movie does this very movie thing of like, I'm having a long monologue before I can finally die. He does have a really great line in there of, I never wanted a boy, I only wanted you from the first moment.
Yeah.
That's a great line. But I think what it kind of takes away is the atmosphere from the book of the suddenness of death. And Anne just walks in, she's picked these flowers, and Matthew's died. He's gone before the doctor gets there. And it's just that like unexpectedness and suddenness, and there's no closure, and that person's just gone.
Yeah.
I appreciate that in the book. I can see why they changed it for the film, but it just makes it a little bit cheesy to have the long, like,
I think that the movie did that because there was so much, like, actually the writer herself says that she got so much shit basically for
killing Matthew.
Like, people hated that decision. They were so angry, and even she later on said that if it was up to her, like, she would have changed it. But she wrote the book at the time, and that's how she felt like it needed to happen.
Well, she didn't know there would be sequels. She was like, I'm writing this one book.
Yeah. So I think that the movie did that to try and soften people's reaction to the suddenness of Matthew's death and how much everybody hated it. Because reading the book, it was like, it felt like your heart got ripped out. You know what I mean? Like, it was so traumatic, and you're just like, you wanted to see more of like their character development together. And I think
you changed my mind.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, there was there was so much like anger toward the book. I think I threw the book.
I would have too if I had been younger.
I think I like read the thing and threw the book, and I was so upset. I think it took me like several days to go back and finish reading. And like, I don't think that people with that much passion needed something to soften it.
Yeah.
So that they could get through the movie and then want to watch the next one. It was a beautiful scene, and yes, it was cheesy, but I think that it needed that closure because the first reaction was like, I would have turned the movie off if they didn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, people had like a gut reaction to Matthew's death, and I think that they didn't.
Which just means you wrote a great character.
Yeah, no, phenomenal. You know what I mean? But I don't think anybody really wanted the character to go away. So I don't know. I think that may be the reasoning. For me, it was definitely made it more bearable seeing that whole scene. And yes, it was like long.
There was something else I wanted to ask you about Anne and Gilbert and where you stand on this, because a lot of people always say she loved him the whole time and didn't want that to be true. I can see that for the third book when they finally get together. I have issue with that when we're speaking about like a child and somebody who's like 11 or 12 and then putting something over them like, oh, they had romantic feelings all the time. To me, it's like, just let children be children.
I never got that. Like, I never. Some people just aren't ready for that.
Right.
And I don't think Anne was that person. She wasn't ready for any kind of emotional thing outside of friendship. You know, that was the most important thing in her life, was her friends and her family. And because she never had that, and that's all she ever longed for growing up, having a bosom friend, you know,
that's
even
true.
to the point of like imagining something in the mirror and imagining this world. I mean, I did that as a kid. And the idea of like, you know, I think that she's definitely not, and she doesn't even see him like that. She sees him more as a challenge to beat, you know, someone to like something to conquer.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't like ascribing all these motivations to, oh, she did it because she was in love with him. I think that there was always, I don't think that even if she had any kind of anything toward him, I just don't think she was emotionally capable of having any kind of feelings like that for her. I agree.
I think that there was a like there. She needed him to like push her forward. And she was the type to over fantasize certain types of love. And I don't even think she, you know, she didn't even see love as it was, if that makes any sense. Like,
it was just this idea.
It was just this idea of like this romance, like these, that's what she read. That's all she knew. So any other kind of like romantic gesture, like, wasn't even in her brain. Like, I I almost feel like she wouldn't even have like had those emotions until way later. I mean, even as, you know, when she's approached in the future, she still doesn't like in future books, she still has like no interest in it. I remember the scene where you find out that Diana is like dating someone and like, you know, its reaction.
Yeah, it's very negative.
Yeah, it's very negative because to her, it's like that's competition, that's jealousy. This is her friend. She doesn't want to share. She doesn't want to move on. She's very content with the life that she has now. It's a romance. It's like for her imagination. It's not something she wants in her reality. If that makes sense.
I agree. Going back to Anne and Diana, my only last note here is one of the best lines in the show, and it's when they're just crying out their eyes because they can't be together anymore. The mom has forbidden it, and Anne goes, "Would thou give me a lock of thine jet black tresses?" And Diana says, "But I don't have any black dresses." It's so funny because they're being so extra, so dramatic, and they don't even know what they're saying. It's great.
It's a great scene.
Did you have any last notes about Anne of Green Gables? Anything we didn't talk about?
If you have not read it or seen it, you should do both because it's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic. It really teaches about that it's okay to live in your head sometimes, and I feel like some people take you out of that and like don't want you to have that imagination, and I think it's missing in society sometimes, and I think it's important to know that is okay and that it exists, and it's okay to be a little off, you know, and not want to draw inside the lines, you know.
Yeah, so that's a good message to close with. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at Modern Life Pod. Visit our website, modernlifepodcast.com, and email us modernlifepod@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Anne Shirley, what in the heck are you doing?
Fishing for lake trout.
For lake trout.